Good evening, and welcome to the 4th annual Dr. Sam and Jeannene Hayes Lecture. My name is Carson Wilson.
And I am Josiah D'Albini.
And we are the co-chairs of the Hayes Lecture Series Planning Committee for the Blue Key Honor Society. Blue Key Honor Society is a premier honor society that recognizes college students for balance and excellence in scholarship, leadership, and service. The organization originated on Emporia State's campus in 1961. The organization was absent from campus from 1986 until homecoming of 2012.
The Hayes Lecture was established by Dr. Sam and Jeannene Hayes as a way to engage Emporia State's alumni for their successes. Hayes lecturers were prominent leaders during their time at Emporia State and have continued that leadership in their professional lives. We would like to thank and recognize Dr. Sam and Jeannene Hayes for sponsoring the lecture series, Doug and Nan Smith for establishing the 5 $1,000 scholarships that are awarded based on the essays submitted by students following this lecture, our great advisor, June Coleman, all the members of Blue Key Honor Society, past and present, and Ed Cates, our guest speaker for tonight. At this time, we would like to ask Ken Reeves to introduce this evening's speaker.
What a pleasure. 1972 was an excellent year. Actor Marlon Brando uttered the words, "I am going to make him an offer he can't refuse," for the first time in The Godfather. Life Cereal introduced us to Mikey, who would eat anything. The Oakland Athletics won the World Series. Not going to happen this year. Nike introduced the first running shoe. The best-selling car was the Volkswagen Beetle. As I prepared for my preparation for this evening, I found out that tonight's guest speaker and I also have something in common with that special year in 1972. I was graduating from a small high school in southeast Kansas and making my way to then Kansas State Teachers College as a freshman. And Ed Cates was born. My money is on the fact that Ed's birth was far more significant than any of the other things I mentioned. Events in Edward's life led him to Emporia State. Darrell Wynn, an alum of Emporia State and also a former Kansas Board of Regents member, as well as Ed's father, were instrumental in bringing him to us. His father was the first 2-term student body president and also the first president of color at Emporia State, then KSTC. Ed's mother has been a leader and was also instrumental in directing him to higher education and us. And Ed became a Hornet, and the rest is history. Edward was a dynamic and engaged speaker. Ed, you owe me $10 for that, okay? He typically attended my class. We didn't have required attendance in those days. Yes, we did. Okay. He was student senator, and he was vice president of ASG. He was an active member of his fraternity and many university campus organizations, as well as president of Black Student Union. He also spent a summer as a Clinton intern, and he wants me to tell you it was pre-Monica Lewinsky. He even said that on the radio. His professional accomplishments are even greater. You have the printed biography on the card in your seat, and you also will see information behind me. But I want to talk about a couple of things. Ed spent 10 years with Bank of America, where he rose to be vice president at the corporate level. He also took Carter Brothers Company from making $40 million to $100 million. And he's now CEO and managing partner of Nuance Publishing. Ed also is a freelance writer, and he'll talk tonight about how important communication and writing skills are as well. He has interviewed a number of very important people, and if you have an opportunity to get a hold of Savoy magazine, I would encourage you to do so. Edward Cate understands legacies. As I mentioned, his father was a leader here on campus. His mother was a founding member of a mentoring program for the National Black MBA Association and has led through her association with a number of companies for 32 years before her retirement. His grandfather was president of the Kansas chapter of the NCAAP at a time that there were theaters in Kansas City that would not integrate. His grandfather called upon Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to go to Kansas City. He did so, and Ed's grandfather walked with Dr. and Mrs. King and protested what was going on in Kansas City. Ed, along with his wife, Melissa, who is also here with us this evening, have 3 sons, and they're also providing a legacy for them. Ed shared on Facebook, and I hope it's okay if I mention that one of his sons, who is a student at Brandeis University, recently led a public forum talking about the events in Ferguson, Missouri. The legacy lives on. It is my humble honor and my privilege to welcome Edward Cates home to Emporia State University. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2014 Dr. Sam and Jeannene Hayes Lecturer and my friend, Mr. Edward Cates.
Wow, that was incredible. Great introduction. I'm going to bump that up to 15 from the 10 that we talked about earlier. It is truly an honor to be back home at Emporia State University. As a communication major, do you know how daunting it is to deliver a speech in front of professors who taught you how to deliver speeches? It's a bit daunting. But at the same time, it's very moving because Emporia State University has meant a lot to not just me, but also my family for many, many years. And so to have a chance to come back and be a part of this is a very important event. And so I hope you'll stick with me. I have some important messages that I want to share. I would like to thank, first and foremost, Dr. Sam and Jeannene Hayes for establishing this lecture series and making this opportunity possible. I'd also like to thank Angela Fullen, Carson Wilson, Michael Torres, and the members of the Blue Key Honor Society for their invitation. Hospitality and their coordination has made it possible for me to come home once again and be a part of the Emporia State University homecoming. I'd also like to thank President Shanrock for your hospitality. We had a great conversation at dinner, and the enthusiasm and excitement that he has about Emporia State University is truly contagious. And I can't say that I've ever seen so much school spirit, even when I was here. Lord knows this union, the Memorial Union, is incredible. It's almost unrecognizable. We really got shorted when we were here. I think we went through the cafeteria last night. My wife and I just kind of walked through. I said the only thing that we had in the cafeteria that they have was the chocolate milk in the milk machine. That was about all that we had. We didn't have wood-fired pizza and all that. That would have been 500 pounds if we did that. But as I look out into the audience, I see so many familiar faces of friends, of fraternity brothers, of professors and faculty. It's good to see you all, and it's good to be home. Since my graduation in 1995, this is the first homecoming I've ever attended. This is also my lovely wife, Melissa's, first visit to Emporia State University in our 18 years together. I promise to never stay away from home this long again. The campus is, again, so inspiring, and it means a lot to see the progression and growth of ESU in such a meaningful way. Now, I know there's been a fair amount of promotion for my lecture on the subject of owning your legacy of leadership, and I hope that you'll forgive me as I take some creative license and freedom of prerogative as I've changed the title to a more appropriately frame the talk that I'm going to have with you this evening. The new title is a bit longer, a bit more definitive and reflective of my rhetorical delivery. I apologize for the short notice, but the new title is The Best Doggone Sam and Jeannene Hayes Lecture Ever Delivered During Homecoming 2014. I'm not done. I'm a hornet, I've got a story, and here it goes. Now let's turn up. All right. Like that? Okay, so that's not the new title. I'm joking, but it is an awesome title overall. But I'm going to stick tonight with the title of Owning Your Legacy of Leadership. The usage of the word "your" is purposely reflective of my hopes that this evening's lecture leaves each of you with insights that allows us to embrace the leader within us all. This year's theme for homecoming is Every Hornet Has a Story, and I'm honored to share mine with you. However, I feel it's a bit self-serving to just talk about me without unpacking how my path towards leadership started right here at ESU and has served me in almost all I do. I recognize that I've had a unique legacy of leadership to embrace, and that some of you may feel that you don't have the same history of exposure to leadership that I've had. I want to challenge that perception, because inspirational leadership is all around us. We simply have to break traditional conventions and perceptions of how we define the role of leadership that calls to us all if we learn to hear it. I'm going to walk you through my story and then visit 7 questions that I hope will help you own your legacy of leadership. I'm proudly from Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County, also known as the Dot. In the northeast end, all right, hey, turn on, all right. In the northeast end of Kansas City, Kansas, 4th and Quindaro to be specific. It's not a glorious neighborhood, but it was an epicenter of activism during the civil rights struggle in Kansas. My grandfather, Solomon H. Cates, was the president of the Kansas NAACP and helped bring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to Kansas City Sumner High School to speak and participate and lead protests to create access for African Americans that couldn't gain access to a KCK-based movie theater. My grandmother, Juanita Cates, held a national office as national secretary for the NAACP. Between state and national advocacy, they were a committed couple dedicated to improving circumstances for their children and their community. Thurgood Marshall spent the night at the house that I went to high school from on his way to Topeka as he tried and won the historic desegregation case of Brown versus the Board of Education. My great aunt, Dr. Marjorie Cates, was the first African-American woman to graduate from the University of Kansas Medical School in the 1950s. A hematologist, she went on to do groundbreaking work in HIV and AIDS research in the 1980s and has a clinic named after her in Washington, D.C. My father's oldest brother, Solomon, was one of the first 3 African-American commercial pilots in the United States. Now, I don't want you to think that every Cates was an exceptional, pioneering leader. Like all families, we have our fair share of unruly uncles, eccentric aunts, and crazy cousins. But I was raised by an Emporia State University graduate. One could say that ESU was in my blood long before I ever stepped foot on this campus. My father came to this campus when it was the Kansas State Teachers College in 1964. In 1966, he was elected as the first African-American student government president and was also the first elected president to serve 2 terms. He was a guest of Lyndon Johnson at the White House for the presidential prayer breakfast. That organization assembled leaders from around the country to join the president for a special meeting. His election as president represented tremendous progress at a tumultuous time in the civil rights struggle. Unbeknownst to many, on the night that he was elected president of student government, a cross was burned in the front yard of his apartments where he lived. And a caravan of family came down the next day from Kansas City to show him support and strengthen his resolve. He was also the president of student government when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. And he endeavored to demonstrate the principles of nonviolent progress even during such an unsettling loss. So as his ESU experience formed him as a professional, it also contributed to my upbringing. After my father graduated, he taught special needs children for a brief period. Then he transitioned to corporate America, focusing on human resources. He worked at Hallmark, General Electric, International Paper, Sherwin-Williams, and other corporations. He was a talented, successful, and recognized as a leader that got things done. As a corporate kid, I was born in New Jersey, lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Manhattan, New York, not where K-State is, Stamford, Connecticut, Shaker Heights, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland, and Kansas City, Kansas. I transferred schools often and learned how to make friends quickly. And while my father was an incredible professional, he was also an amazing father. My father was divorced and raised me as a single father for most of my youth. I only had 16 years with him before he passed away in 1987. For most of those years, he invested in my development intensely, almost as if he wanted to prepare me for the years that would follow after his premature departure. I was fluent in French by the age of 5, although I lost that fluency. I took piano lessons. We maintained season tickets to the Metropolitan Opera in New York, as well as the Symphony, which I absolutely hated, but learned to appreciate. Because we wouldn't just go to the symphony, we had to go to the lecture ahead of time to understand what the movements of the Four Seasons were, which was, wow. Our weekends were filled with visits to museums where I was forced to recite every descriptive label for the pieces of art we viewed. Many times with clenched teeth and tears of frustration because I'd rather be playing Atari or riding my bike. But this immersive exposure to the arts and culture helped develop me in ways that I couldn't understand, and yet I appreciate it now. It's important to understand that while my father was an incredible professional and a father, he was also very human and struggled with substance abuse problems that ended his life prematurely. Now, I'm framing my story this way because I want to make the following perfectly clear, that I'm not supposed to be here delivering a speech. And while I had tremendous examples of pioneers and trailblazers and leaders in my family, I also faced circumstances and adversity in my youth that should have made me a statistic. The repercussions of the battles my father faced in his life impacted our family deeply. For many years of high school and college, I kept the following secrets of my imperfect childhood out of shame and determination to transcend my circumstances. These circumstances were secrets partially because of shame and also because it was how I persevered, prevented ridicule, and prejudice of others. I failed the 7th grade due to challenges I faced at home. I was forced to become a ward of the state of Ohio and in their custody and institutionalized for 2 years as a resident in 2 group homes, including the Metzenbaum Children's Home, where Antoine Fisher stayed for a while, and also the Ohio Boys Town in Berea, Ohio, by age 14. I was in a group home with young men that were youth offenders, at-risk youth, runaways, and teens with a range of psychological issues that they faced due to their circumstances. In the midst of this time, I recognized that the exit from the system I was in didn't have a positive ending when you turned 18. The choices available to us were either to go into the Job Corps or the military, neither of which was where I wanted to be. So, no Candy Crush. So at 13, after repeating the 7th grade, I made a conscious choice to work the system and rejoin my father, who had relocated back to Kansas City, Kansas, to live with my grandmother. Unsure of the stability of my environment, I moved to Kansas City in 1986 to live with my father and grandmother until my father was able to transition into getting a better place for us, just the two of us. And then in December of 1987, my world was devastated as my father passed away during my freshman year at Washington High School. So I found myself now living with my grandmother in the northeast end of Kansas City, Kansas, during a pivotal change with the onset of the crack epidemic that would peak over the next 4 to 5 years, that was coupled with the introduction of gang violence in my neighborhood. I explained away to new friends being an older 8th grader as simply starting school late, and never talked about what happened to me in Ohio and tried at a new start. And although it may sound counterintuitive, landing in the hood in KCK was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I was a spoiled suburban kid that was on his way to becoming a proverbial Carlton from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I was redirected to learning the realities of the inner city. I learned a lot from my time on Quindera Boulevard. I got beat up. I lost a lot of fights. I won a few. I had friends that were drug dealers. I had friends that were shot and killed in drive-by shootings. I learned how to be streetwise and balance it with being book smart. I learned survival. And most importantly, I learned that people were people independent of how much they had or didn't have. Many of my friends and their parents opened their homes to me and fed me meals, and their kindness and caring was sincere and abundant. And although it was tough, I was able to immerse myself in student activities in high school. I was in band, orchestra, debate, forensics, student council, and more. I spent as much time and weekends as I could at student activities. I was thriving in the structure of extracurricular activities, but also knew how to navigate my hood. I was comfortable in both worlds. Cool and nerd are the two words that were used most in my yearbook signatures from my friends, and I was okay with that. Transcending and adjusting to my circumstances didn't happen independently. I credit this to my neighbors, my family, my grandmother, my Uncle Herb, my mother, friends and people that came into my life and saw things in me I didn't see in myself. They were truly buoys of stability in a sea of unrest. As a senior at Washington High School, I had an amazing guidance counselor named Ruth Goheen, who believed in me and wanted to make sure my dreams of college would become a reality. Her husband was an attorney at a prominent Kansas City law firm and wanted me to meet one of his colleagues named Daryl Wynn, a distinguished alumnus of Emporia State University. I met Daryl and his friend, J.D. Rios, and they were unlike any two men I'd ever met. They were challenging and committed to helping me find a home at Emporia State University. I applied to ESU and was accepted, and they were tremendous supporters that influenced my decision to attend. Now that I was accepted, I had to figure out how to pay for it. I called the financial aid office, and on my first call, I was connected with the then director of financial aid, Ms. Wilma Kasnick. I explained my situation, and in short order, she shared with me that she knew exactly who my father was, and that he had attended at ESU, and she would help me find scholarships and grants to make my attendance possible. She worked with Dr. Harry Stevens and Mr. William King to assemble a package of scholarships that, coupled with student loans and Pell Grants, made attending ESU possible. Again, I was blessed with a host of people that I didn't know that cared and believed in me to make my education possible. In August of 1991, the first day the dorms opened, I packed my 1987 Ford Tempo, which was clean. It was dark navy blue, had tint, had a little flexible antenna, nice stereo system. But anyway, I packed up my Ford Tempo to report for college here at Emporia State University. I left Quindera Boulevard, heading down I-35 South with pride of where I was from, with deep appreciation for my time there, with love for my grandmother, and also pride for where I was going. I was attending the college where my father went, Emporia State University, and it meant the world to me. The first time I stepped in the Memorial Union, I was walking past the ASG display, and the former president, Scott Bruner, stopped and talked with me. I introduced myself, and he said, "I know who you are. Your father went to school here. He was the first black student government president. He was my fraternity brother in Tau Kappa Epsilon. His pictures is on the wall of our house. Have you considered getting involved in student government? We have a freshman senator seat available for appointment, and I'd love to recommend you for the Senate." And I said yes, and I filled out the application. And I joined ASG as a student senator, and within 30 days of arriving on campus. 1999 was themed as the year of diversity. And I remember attending a town hall where a panel of student leaders and former President Robert Glennon talked about diversity. Little did I know that diversity would be a theme and a passion that would impact my life for the next 23 years. As a senator, we faced a controversial recognition of a new student organization called GLARE, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance for Resource and Education. Their recognition was met with tremendous opposition and heated debates. And I was proud to help vote for their recognition and receive funding from Associated Student Government. I'm proud to see that the inclusion and diversity has continued to grow on our campus here at ESU. Now, on a less controversial note, we also recognized that year an organization called SPAM, which stood for the Students for the Preservation of Alternative Music, which kind of got the award for the most creative name of a student organization. And every meeting they would have cans of SPAM, which was, kind of unique and cool, but I digress. I went on to become the Vice President of Associated Student Government and made great friends working with a talented group of dedicated, intelligent student leaders. I helped found the Young Democrats of America. I participated with the Associated Students of Kansas, was the president of the Black Student Union, and also chapter president of our fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I also worked as a resident assistant in the Twin Towers, and once again I immersed myself in student activities and gained so much by giving my time to these organizations. Participating with these student organizations allowed me to be led and also to lead. This experience was a critical part of my journey towards leadership. The education I received at Emporia State University has proven time and time again to be one of the best investments I've ever made in my future. My freshman year, I lucked up and got Kenna Pearson Reeves as my freshman advisor. Everyone told me she was awesome. She was and still is. Kenna was friendly, nurturing, and a passionate educator that I felt truly cared about me, and she did, and she still does. And I originally wanted to major in political science, but decided that communication was a field of study I would enjoy more. When I switched my major to communication, I lucked up again and was paired with Dr. Myrna Cornett DeVito, another amazing professor that truly guided my studies with the direction I needed and such sincere commitment to my success. Dr. David Matheny, Professor John Lehman, Dr. Stephen Catt, Kenna Pearson Reeves, and Dr. Myrna Cornett DeVito are my educational heroes. Their impact on me is immeasurable, and I appreciate their dedication and persistence in expecting the best from me even when I didn't want them to. As I approached the summer after my junior year, I knew I needed professional experience with a real internship. I went to the Career Development Student Employment Office and was paired with a counselor that helped me review internship options. The White House internship program was one that I was interested in. It seemed lofty, but we agreed to go for it, and I'll be damned if I wasn't accepted. From May to August of 1993, I interned with the Office of Advanced and Scheduling at the White House for President Bill Clinton. I worked with some of the brightest and best student leaders from some of the best universities in the country, and that summer changed my life, and it wouldn't have been possible without Emporia State University. I graduated in May of 1995 and departed Emporia, the father of my twin sons, Justin and Jordan, and headed to Charlotte to be with them. I didn't think much about what I was leaving behind as I was thinking more of what I was headed toward. I started looking for employment and landed my first full-time job as a houseware supervisor for Target. I remember pushing buggies in the rain, saying, I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in communication, and I'm wearing red and khaki and pushing damn carts in the rain. A fraternity brother encouraged me to go to a step show practice for the local graduate chapter in Charlotte for our fraternity. And while I was there, I met a recruiter named Corey Prince from Nations Bank, now Bank of America. He asked for my resume, and he called me the next day. I remember Corey asked me what I wanted to do in the bank. I responded that I wanted to be in the management training program, but I knew I didn't have enough experience. Then he said words that I will never forget. He said, Brother Cates, I will help you get in the management training program, but you can never say the sentence you just said to me again. Your student leadership experience from college is greater than most managers we have in our training program. That leadership experience means a lot, but you have to believe you are experienced enough to make it through the process. That experience he referenced happened right here at Emporia State University. He referred me to a recruiter. I interviewed, and in January of 1996, I started my 10-year career with Nations Bank and Bank of America. Over that time, I held 5 positions and was promoted from officer to vice president, managing teams ranging from 5 to 20 people, budgets of over $1.2 million, and contributed to the generation of over $600 million in commercial and private banking business. In 2007, I decided to pursue my dreams of entrepreneurship and founded Nuance Marketing, with the idea that I would leverage my marketing and communication skills to provide services to mid-size and Fortune 500 clients. Within 3 months of starting the business, we gained contracts with Delta Airlines, Wachovia, and Wells Fargo. We've also worked with CVS Caremark, corporate headquarters, Bank of America, Savoy Magazine, and more. The foundation of building my dream and having the confidence to lead my company were built right here at Emporia State University. I learned about my talents right here. I embraced my legacy of leadership right here at ESU. I want to encourage you to embrace your legacy of leadership by understanding your talents through the following 7 questions. First question, what are your talents? Everyone has talents in a field of areas. Understanding those talents and how they can be combined with personal passions unlocks a field of opportunities for your life. I want to challenge you to truly take self-inventory of the things you do well as soon as you can. When faced with the question, what are your talents? I've heard people respond that they don't have any, and I refuse to believe that. Begin by examining the things you do well, or perhaps the things that you naturally gravitate towards. Perhaps they are activities that come easier to you than it does for others. Or they may simply be things that seem effortless to you that bring you great enjoyment. It took many years after graduation to understand and feel totally comfortable understanding my verbal and written communication skills were more proficient than most I encountered in business. If you think that sounds aloof or conceited, throw that out of your mind, because truly understanding your talents is about unashamedly owning what you're good at. I'm an excellent communicator. I own that. I have many areas of improvement, like brevity, and I own that too. Recognizing your talents is only the beginning. Knowing your talents without using them or developing them for a purpose is simply wasted potential. I recognize that using my written communication skills were useful in making complex theories simple, or conveying the value of a product or service through branding, or preparing a marketing and communication plan. As an entrepreneur, I've ghostwritten statements on supplier diversity for multiple CEOs of Fortune 100 companies and seen them deployed across global organizations. Marketing and branding was a natural application of where my talents could be most useful. But also developing language that was meaningful and purposeful to increase opportunities for minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses was something that I cared about. It was natural for me. It inspired me to do groundbreaking work in diversity and inclusion for companies that I worked for and also the clients that I represented. So your talents may be math, science, nuclear physics, caring for others, nurturing, baking, singing, dancing, agriculture, or twerking. Maybe I'm going to stop, not the twerking, take that back, I'm going to redact that. But whatever your talent is, own it, develop it. Don't say, I'm owning my twerking, don't do that, okay? But own your talent, develop it, apply it. Your leadership will be fueled by your talents and truly inspire others. Next question is, who are you when no one is looking? Being honest with yourself can be very hard. The misconception of how we would like to be perceived has very little to do with the reality of who we really are. In order for you to transcend your current performance levels, you have to be completely honest with who you are and where you are right now. If you have shortcomings, recognize them and do something about them. Fix the things that you know could be improved about yourself. We are imperfect human beings, but as I've shared, our experiences and circumstances do not define or limit our ability to transcend our circumstances. You must be honest with yourself. Don't feed yourself excuses. Know your weaknesses and strengths and endeavor to continue to improve them. As I advise clients in the areas of brand development and management, sincerity and authenticity are two elements that I focus deeply on. If you convey who you really are at all times, you don't have to spend time trying to conduct version control on who has seen which version of you. You're the same person every time because you are genuinely present and engaged. Who inspires you and why? I've had some amazing family members that inspired me in my youth. Too often in today's world, celebrities and people beyond arm's reach are selected as inspirational leaders. I understand that, but I would also encourage you to take the celebrity out of leadership. There are professors on this campus that lead classes, or teachers leading classes at high schools or elementary schools. Inspirational leadership can come from your friends that are active in community service or local politics. Oftentimes, the most inspirational leaders are the people who have brushed our hair and tucked us in and kissed us goodnight. As a parent of 3 amazing sons, our children inspire me. They're so smart and resilient and caring, and they inspire me to work harder so that we can support them in their pursuit of their dreams. One of our sons won a 7th grade speech competition many years ago with a piece entitled, "Inspiration is not hard to find." And those words are true now more than ever as our sons inspire us through their achievement in leadership. Another very important source of inspiration is my life partner and beloved wife, Melissa. She's been by my side through good times and bad. She is my biggest supporter and cheerleader. Melissa inspires me because she balances being a wife, professional, a mother, a daughter, and a sister so selflessly. But also she is committed to improving the lives of at-risk youth. For 8 years, she has volunteered with the juvenile court system, working on their citizens review panel to help young people who are displaced from their families, group homes, and are facing adversity. The stories of abuse and mistreatment she deals with are beyond unsettling. I can't ask her how it went. Curious why she volunteered for such tough work, she assuredly and quickly answered, "Because of you." I think about what she went through as a young man and hope that I can help a young person find their way just as people did for you. If someone hadn't done that for you, I wouldn't have you as my husband. I want to thank you for your unconditional love, for your selfless giving, and your extraordinary meatloaf and gravy. I love you tremendously, and you have convinced me that gravy is the missing food group. Remember who has helped you along the way, or who has helped you along the way. Taking an inventory of those who truly care about your development and advancement is an important step in developing true leadership. We all need a network and support system to help us advance. Remembering and staying connected to those who have or will help us is important on the path to leadership. There have been so many that have helped me, some I've mentioned and many that I haven't. My mother, Audrey Hines, and my stepfather, Ernie Hines, have been a team that has helped me along the way, serving as friends, mentors, and devil's advocates. I have a wonderful family and appreciate all they've done to help me along the way. I have to recognize my brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. All right, 06. As an only child, I was raised without siblings. And during my time here at Emporia State University, our fraternal bond has evolved into lifelong friendships. These gentlemen here on this front row became an extended family when I didn't have any. And some of these brothers have traveled from Los Angeles, California, from Tulsa, Oklahoma, from Topeka, just to be here to support me. We're here in Emporia. And it means a great deal for you all to come here to support me, and I thank you for all that you've done. I love you guys. For those I haven't mentioned by name, please know that you're appreciated nevertheless. No one is an island. Everyone needs someone. Remember those that help you and maintain connections with them. You will need each other one way or another. Who, what, or where can you develop your talents into mastery? Once we acknowledge and embrace our talents, it is the first step. All talents that can be developed and improved to make us better leaders and contributors to society. Perhaps it's the selection of a major or contributing your time to campus or community organizations. Knowing your talents is important, but being a continual student and pursuing how to improve your skills is essential to longevity and successful leadership. When I was a junior, and in the late Dr. David Matheny's advanced public speaking class, we were charged to deliver our final project as a commencement speech in cap and gown in an auditorium. I delivered my speech, and in his standard, unceremonious fashion, he said, "Thank you, Mr. Cates. You all are dismissed. Mr. Cates would like to see you after class." I was terrified, instantly terrified. Dr. Matheny was a tall man, and yet a man of few words. I was sure I was in trouble, and when I walked over to him, he said, "I'd like you to be a graduate assistant in my advanced public speaking course next semester." Well, I clarified to him that I wasn't a graduate student, and he said, "I don't care. You can help students become better speakers." I happily accepted and reviewed tape speeches with his advanced public speaking students and providing tips and critiques. Being asked to help him in this way was as close to a gush as you were going to get. He had an amazing wit and a resonant timbre that demanded attention. Dr. Matheny believed in me, and subsequently I believed in myself more. Professors like Dr. Matheny, John Lehman, Kenneth Pearson Reeves, Dr. Myrna Cornett DeVito, and Dr. Stephen Catt helped me develop my talents in ways I couldn't have imagined. Emporia State University is an important place for you to develop your skills to mastery. The professors at ESU care about the students here and their success. Make the most of your time here and use your access to this talented faculty to become the best and develop your talents. I know what it's like to try and just get by. Take advantage of that time. How can you share your talents to help the greater good of humanity? While the origin of talents can be debated from divine intervention to self-developed, we should all challenge ourselves to understand how our talents can help others. Unused talents for the greater good of humanity denies our collective ability to advance with the strengths we all bring to the table. As a member of the ESU community, you have a responsibility to be ambassadors of the spirit of the university, caring forward the education you've received to your selected area of expertise. Lastly, an important question: what will your legacy of leadership be? As we pursue our ambitions and goals with our talents applied, we should consider the legacy we're leaving behind by the lives we touch and the leadership we provide. Understanding the legacy we all create and keeping it top of mind allows us to continue on the path of inspiring leadership. This evening, I've shared parts of my story that only a handful of people in this room have ever heard. I've done so because Emporia State University means that much to me. Also because if my journey towards leadership can inspire even one person in attendance tonight, it was all worthwhile. And in this way, I'm building on the work that I've done here at ESU and contributing to the greater cycle of inspired leadership. In closing, I want to reiterate that I was not supposed to be here today to deliver this lecture because of the circumstances in my life. I could have been a statistic, yet I was able to do so through the help and assistance of family, friends, and faculty. My choice has been to honor the investment that others made in me by working hard to embrace and develop my talents, to respect the context of my origins, and not allow them to limit or define my trajectory, and ultimately own my legacy of leadership. Once again, I would like to thank everyone involved in making my return home to Emporia State University possible and providing me the opportunity to share my story. Let's enjoy an exciting 2014 homecoming. Stingers up.